So in the first title, others have seen what it is and asked why, and I have seen what it could be and asked why not. So Picasso said that apparently, and explore this distinction with reference to two areas of knowledge, so that's already prescribed for you. The first thing we need to really look at is defining our key terms. So if we consider what does it mean, what is? Well, what is reality. Okay, so reality and what is going to be very much our sense perception, direct experiential contact with reality, referring to the experience of the individual. Possibly you could talk about the shared agreement of what is as well from a number of different perspectives. Essentially, though, we can say that what is derived from direct personal knowledge, or indirectly perhaps through shared publications of research which debate what something is and then arrive at a conclusion about it. From the point of view of sense perception, defining reality in terms of what is very much going to be interested in empirical data and perhaps patterns in that data. This method of inquiry should be shown to be pragmatic and of value and of benefit, right? So if others have seen what is and asked why, well, there's value to that. Why have people done that? Why have these others seen what is and asked why? And why have we continued this tradition? Well, there are values and benefits, and it's often very pragmatic to see what reality is and discern. The why question sometimes asks, why are we seeing this? So, quantum research examples or examples that are drawn from, biology, chemistry are going to be showing up data sets which really are going to provoke scientists to say, why are we seeing this? It can also provoke a review of the methodology itself. Why are we seeing something? Are we missing something? Are we blinded by what we are seeing? Is there a bias due to what we are seeing? And so there can become a reflection on the methodology itself, on the methods being used, and then that really is when we start to define what methodology is, as opposed to method. Method is going to be a straightforward series of steps. Methodology is going to be an examination of those steps and whether they are appropriate and effective and useful in a particular situation. All right. However, there are also limitations in this method of seeing what is and then asking why are we seeing this. So we can say, well, what are those limitations? They could be explored as well. So you can have this pros and cons structure to the essay where you can say the benefits of seeing what is and asking why, have examples of those benefits, then the limitations of seeing what is and asking why, and examining those limitations. When we ask what could be, so now if we step over to what Pablo Picasso in his somewhat arrogant, sounds a bit arrogant, doesn't it? Statement there. What could be? Well, what could be is certainly a leap of the imagination. Imagination can be defined then as both a result of living experience in the world. It would be hard to imagine being imaginatively pure in the sense of completely free of any of the structures or the paradigms of reality, and to have a purely imaginative composition. Rather, imagination is always a step of reality. It's always a step from. So it's taking something, adding to it, changing it, inverting it. And then imagination is always stimulated, or most often stimulated, by what is apparent in the world. Perhaps there could be an examination, a discussion of that relationship, that, what is, if we look at what is, first, detail that, and then we can come to an imaginative. So we can say that there's even a connected relationship between, sense perception, determination of reality as it is, to imagination, the projection of what reality could be. Imagination can be a result of being alive in the world, and also, however, it can be a stimulus, an inspiration for creating something new in the world. So there's also that sense of imagination that can be defined. It can be defined also in the artistic and creative sense and in the scientific lateral thinking sense. In the artistic and creative sense, then, this could be put in a counterpoint to possibly who Picasso was referring to. Was he referring to realists, people who, the realist tradition, rather than to scientists, as I've explained, as I've put here, when we're trying to define what reality is? We will normally define it empirically. That leads us most naturally to the natural sciences, most clearly there. However, Picasso may have in fact been referring to realism. Alright, so we've got different senses of the word reality. We've also got different senses of the word imagination. So this consideration of what is can be looked at from the point of view of empirical sciences. It can also be looked at from the point of view of realism in art. So if you were to look at realism in art, then certainly you could do some research on what the limitations of realism in art were. John Berger's ways of seeing would be a nice place to start. And then what we would definitely notice by looking at that are the fallacies that are involved, and also the propaganda purposes that realism in art is coming from, the viewpoint that it's coming from. That's when we could look at this term, the others, and we could say, okay, artists from realism, literature especially, would aim to represent reality most directly. Dostoevsky and other writers also could be looked at in terms of realism in literature, and thereby would provoke readers to question why. Not only the artist would be questioning why, or even the scientist might not be questioning why at that point, but it would certainly provoke the question, why is this happening? Why is there such inequality? Why in these works of art we're only seeing white men with their upper middle class families gazing out on their property and their estate, and their white wives and their children are all regarded as their property. We then start to see that realist depictions in art can lead us to some very interesting explanations of social, historical, and political realities as well. So there's enormous benefit actually in leading to the why question. Scientists collecting raw data or analyzing data sets might also be constituting this membership of the others. We would also want to be looking at defining the word seen, right? To see with the eyes, or to see with advanced technology, microscopes, and even statistical analysis like what is used in the Hadron Collider, which doesn't actually see anything, it just records data and it just comes out a series of numbers. You've also got seeing with the mind. Now, is that what artists that are non-realist artists, do they see with the mind? And does that help us to define what imagination could be, to see with the mind? When we look at artists, especially if Pablo Picasso is being held up and revered as, the artist who's supremely capable of seeing with the mind and seeing what could be. Well, we also have to remember that scientists do this as well. And there would be many examples where scientists have made intuitive leaps and imaginative leaps into discovery, based on what could be there and what could be explaining this, even when the explanation is not immediately available. And it's actually a long way from being immediately available. We could explore so we can also look at defining who the I is. I have seen. So that person's personal knowledge. Who are these people? Who counts as a valid seer? Experts, groundbreakers in different disciplines. So some knowledge questions might be, what does what is refer to, or what is reality, and how do we know what reality is? And then, how are our perceptions presented to us? What are our limitations in defining what is reality? Because certainly Picasso's statement, the way he ends it so arrogantly, might in fact, there might be the implications of it. What are the limitations in perceiving reality as it is? And who are these others being referred to? Are they experts? How is expertise defined, and who qualifies as an expert? Does expertise require a clear understanding of reality, as what we might find inside the natural scientists, among scientists? Some scientists would be qualified to define reality in a certain way. We can look at climate change examples as well there. Does Picasso's incredible use of the imagination qualify him to be more of an expert than realist painters? Does that, to some extent, justify a claim that art is making progress, and that it's evolving and it's becoming, the art of today is somehow superior to the art of earlier eras, which were limited and compromised by their time and place. The areas of knowledge that would stand out mostly would be the arts and the sciences. Certainly with reasoning is going to play a role here, inductive and deductive reasoning and their involvement in imagination and language. So deductive reasoning certainly can be tied to the imagination. Interesting discussions could explore how scientific inquiry starts with an apprehension of reality represented through data sets, and then that it uses questioning to gain understandings of these data sets. Data-driven inquiry is useful in natural sciences and often provokes the need for further data collection. Comparative examples to support Picasso's statement could also be drawn from realism. When do these artists ask why? And maybe realism art didn't ask why. That was the point, to not ask why, but to represent reality in its most perfect sense. And that's when we could possibly make connections to Plato's ideal and the realm of the idea. Regarding their representations, perhaps some technical reasoning or critical reasoning might be available. Counter-argument here might be that not all scientific inquiry is developed this way. Often science is motivated from an imaginative or an intuitive leap that then provokes empirical inquiry to aim at trying to understand what is. Emotional, along with direct sensory perceptions, form experiences which provoke imagination, and impetus is then felt to share with others these deductions and imaginations using various modes of language and representation, such as art itself.